Hey, what's up, guys? Kevin Yates here, back with another video. Today I want to talk about 5 effective verbal communication skills that can save your relationship. This is the big thing. It's with couples, whether you're married or whether you're dating, doesn't matter. And I've always said that before you walk down the aisle, or even before you get involved in a serious relationship, man, they should give you a manual, like a how-to manual, a how-to, for married couples, or just a how-to for couples, especially communication. It's the biggest block and the biggest source of problems in relationships, because when we don't communicate, and I mean, everything breaks down, right? We don't really have a relationship when we don't have communication. And this isn't just though for like couples. I'm a dad to a 10-year-old daughter, and man, I had to learn a lot the hard way, and I still have to learn a lot. But how to communicate with my daughter, and throughout like her different phases of her, growing up. I mean, she's only 10, but there's been very different phases and ways to communicate. And as well as, communicating with like friends, communicating, with coworkers, bosses before it at other jobs, in my career, as a business owner, with clients that I had, like, all of this stuff. And then, with my wife as well. Like, there's so many different types of communication, so it's really, it's kind of like almost like this art, right? But really knowing how to communicate is huge, right? And a lot of the time, like, especially with couples, they tend to think that they need to communicate. I hear it all the time. I've got like women all the time messaging me about their husbands, or their boyfriends, about how they're distant and disconnected and they're not talking, and I can't get them to talk. How do I get them to talk? Or I don't know how to get them to open up, or every time we talk it ends up in an argument and we can't stop, so I don't even talk to them anymore. We don't like bring up things, and it's just a big like it's heartbreaking, because that's how relationships fall apart, right? So I'm going to share five verbal communication skills, right? And they're not rocket science, but they're very powerful. But again, like, a lot of times we're not really using tools to communicate effectively, and then we wonder why our significant other doesn't communicate with us anymore, why our kids aren't talking to us. And as hard as this is to understand, because a lot of times we're thinking it has to do with the other person. It's his fault. He's not communicating with me, right? Or it's, my kid won't talk to me, and it's always about them. When the reality is that if they're not communicating with you, then you have to look at what it is that you're doing, right? There's something that's going on, or something that's not going on, right? But it has to do with you, right? And it's not saying like you're to blame. Okay, so don't take it as a blame thing. It's all it is that it's not about blame. It's just about understanding that there's something that's happening that's stopping the communication, or something not happening that needs to happen, right? And a lot of times it's just having the tools to be able to make communication work, right? So it's not your fault. It's simply your responsibility, right? And that goes for all of us, right? And so I'm going to share with you 5 tools. So number one, let's get right into it here. Number one is asking open-ended questions. Okay. Now, I know that kind of seems like, yeah, right. Everybody knows that. But it's amazing how many times, and I still catch myself doing it sometimes, even especially like when I think I'm right about something, like with my daughter, I'll especially want to do that, where it's like, yes or no, right? Because I want my way or whatever. So I'm leaving no room for like even a discussion when I either ask questions, or I'm saying something that's like a yes or a no type thing, right? So, really asking like open-ended questions is big, because if you just ask somebody, how was your day? They go, good, right? Did you have a good day today? Yeah or no, right? But there's really no communication that's involved. It's kind of like a yes or a no, or a one-word type answer, right? So it's really paying attention to the types of questions that we're asking. and making sure that we're asking questions as well. Questions are one way to get communication going, right? So, if we're not asking questions, we're just making statements, or we're just asking simple, basic, one word answers. I do it with my daughter all the time. How was school today? Good. And that's it. So, I've had to learn to kind of get out of that, and make it more about like, hey, what happened at school today, right? Or what was the most exciting thing that you got to do today? Or, tell me about your day. Things like that, right? And again, you can apply this to any relationship that you have, whether it's a kid, whether it's, a husband or a wife, or just, a boyfriend, girlfriend type thing. This could work with friends, family members, coworkers, even as well. So open-ended questions is number one. Okay, so number two is agreements, right? Coming to agreements rather than expectations, okay? So there's a big difference between an agreement and an expectation. A lot of times in most relationships, what happens is that a person or people, whoever's in the relationship, and let's assume it's two people in a relationship, right? Especially with like a couple. So, one person has their idea of what to expect from the relationship, what they should get from it, what they're going to give to it, maybe what their role is in it. Married couples, right? This is what, I want. This is what I think she wants or he wants. If you have kids, this is going to be what I do, or I'm going to work. She's going to take care of the home. She's going to take care of the kids. I'm going to do this, whatever it is, right? A lot of times, though, what we're doing, we have expectations, and it's like having assumptions. So we're assuming that this is the way it's going to go because this is the way I think it should go, right? And the other person, we forget, they have their own ideas as well. So they've got expectations. They're assuming things as well. And here's the problem. When we don't talk about that stuff, when we don't get together and communicate about what our expectations are to each other, that's what creates a lot of problems. Because when those expectations are not met, and it's almost impossible that they're all going to be met, right? Nobody can read anybody's mind here. And if you can, then man, you shouldn't be watching this video. But honestly, we can't read each other's minds in relationships, right? So, when we don't talk about what our expectations are, then, that's where conflicts start to happen. Expectations aren't met, and then it starts to build over time, resentments, frustration, irritability, anger, and that shit builds and builds, and that just destroys a relationship. So it's really like making sure that we come together and we come to agreements. And all that is just making sure that both people, or whoever's in the relationship, everybody understands where the other person's coming from, and there's agreements about, yes, okay, I agree with, this is going to be kind of, what I'm going to do, or this is what we as a couple should be striving for. This is kind of, the values we have, or the wants that I have. This is our, the goals, whatever. This is your contribution, my contribution. This is how we're going to deal with kids. Are we going to have kids? Like all these types of things, right? But it's having agreements with this stuff before getting involved in a big old relationship, or even worse, getting married or having kids, where you're really tied into this relationship, and then it's too late to, you've already committed, right? And then to find out that you've got all these conflicts, it makes it really, really tough. All right. So it's just about coming to agreements rather than just having expectations. So number three is it's having common ground. Really a lot of times it's like finding common ground. That's called connection with somebody, where we have something in common with somebody else. It's something that connects us. So, when all we see is how we're different, one person wants one thing and one person wants another, rather than, thinking about, well, how can I relate to this person? Maybe there's something similar that I want, and let them know, right? Like really working to establish that common ground. Because when you've got something in common with somebody, it's easier to talk. It's easier to open up. When you feel like isolated or alienated, or just, like you got nothing in common with someone, it really just puts a wall up. Nobody wants to talk to anyone. So, really working. And a lot of times we have to listen to what the other person's saying, and really just kind of find a way to connect, find a way to build some common ground so that we can open up communication. Okay, number four is, and this is what I talked about in the beginning of the video about looking at ourselves. So number 4 and number 5 are going to be about, now it's going to be all about you, right? Looking at you, right? Not looking at you know, what we're doing with the other person here, because the one common thing that we have in every relationship that we get into, whether it's with a significant other, a kid, a friend, a family member, coworker, the grocery clerk at the store, whatever, the one constant thing you bring to every relationship is you. So in order to, you know, work on relationships, really the fundamental thing, the most important person we've got to work on is ourselves, right? So number 4 is accountability, okay? And it's really just looking at what your part is. So whatever it is, whatever the problem is, if you really want to go in deep with it, and this is, I'll tell you that the one of the most powerful ways to transform a relationship is to look at the biggest issue you have, whatever the biggest barrier in your relationship is, whatever the biggest problem is, and to really look at it and to take accountability for your part in it. But really, you know, relationship should be 50% responsibility for both people involved, right? So what we're trying to do is take accountability for our 50%. Not for every single problem. We're not blaming ourselves. We're not taking on all the responsibility for everything, right? But all we're doing is saying, okay, look, I know I've got a 50% responsibility here in this deal. So I've got to be accountable for my 50%. If there's a problem going on, I'm contributing in some way to that problem, okay? So what I need to do is understand what that is and take accountability for that 50%. Because when you take accountability for your shit, then it makes it so much easier for your partner or your kid or whoever. They see that you're doing that, right? And by doing that, it makes them more likely to look at themselves. You know, when somebody like comes up to you and you have an argument with someone, they say, man, you know, I'm sorry, I really like should not have said what I said or whatever. That was my fault, my bad. I really didn't mean those words. Somebody's sincere about that and they're coming at you and they're owning their shit for their part. You know, doesn't that make you like, you want to reciprocate? You go, wow, you know what? That's cool. And hey, you know what? I shouldn't have said what I said either, right? And both people open up. And so that's really like it's a powerful way to transform a relationship by taking accountability just for your 50%. All right, and then number 5, this builds on accountability. So once you take accountability, then it's basically you got to know what you're doing, right? What your contribution is in the relationship, or what's wrong in the relationship. How are you contributing to it? Because once you know it, it's out in the open. You bring awareness to it. And when you bring awareness, then and only then do you have the power to change it. So once you've got accountability, then number 5 is responsibility. Then you could do something about it. And that's responsibility, the ability to respond. So if I've got something that I'm doing wrong in a relationship, or I've got some shit that I need to be, like work through that's causing a problem, then, or contributing to it, then now I need to do something about it. I know what it is. Now I need to do something about it. Maybe, I'm like coming home pissed off at the world because I have a shit day, at work, and I'm coming home and I'm taking it out on, my family. And they don't want to talk to me because they're scared to death, or they sense the anger coming off me, right? If I look at them and point fingers at them, well, shit, they don't want nothing to do with me. Oh man, they don't talk to me. They don't care about me. Man, I'm really not owning my shit. I don't see my contribution. That, man, since I'm coming home pissed off and every time I'm opening my mouth, they're like a target practice for me, and I'm boom, boom, hitting them with all my frustration. And if I don't see that I'm doing that, man, I can't do anything about it, right? And so it just creates a lot of problems. But if now I see that that's what's going on, I can do something about it. That's responsibility, right? So whatever it is, it's having that accountability and then doing something about it, responding to it, having responsibility. And again, that's a me issue. It's our part in it, not about anybody else. It's not about if you do that, I'll do this or whatever. It's just saying, look, I'm owning my shit in this deal. I'm owning my stuff, and I'm going to do something about it in order to save this relationship. All right. So that's it. Right there, those are 5 powerful things. And verbally communicating, right? Because it's tough sometimes to kind of say what we feel without it being like a negative thing. We have, I think, an easy time saying things out of anger when we're pissed off, right? Or when something's wrong, criticizing or blaming or judging. We have an easy time doing that, but we have a lot more difficult time expressing, our own faults, expressing how we really feel in a constructive way that can help build communication in a relationship. So those are 5 powerful, like, verbal communication skills that really can save a relationship. All right, so I hope that helped you out in some way. Let me know if you have any questions. And until next time, have faith, follow your heart, trust yourself, and I'll talk to you then.